As the immigration crisis in Texas and along the southern border escalates, we're seeing a major transformation politically. Hispanic individuals who live in the Rio Grande Valley and on the southern border of many states have started flipping Republican. Now they're voting for people to end the illegal immigration crisis that Tucker Carlson calls the invasion. And it's not quite worked just yet. The sentiment is there, but the election isn't for a few months. In the meantime, there are questions about what people are doing and going to do to actually stop this. And why vote for someone? Why vote to re-elect someone if we're not seeing those big changes just yet? Which brings us to the big story from the post-millennial. DC Mayor slams Republicans for tricking illegal immigrants into taking buses to the nation's capital. That was the bigger story a while ago. That Texas and I believe a couple other states, Arizona perhaps, were putting illegal immigrants on buses and sending them to Washington, D.C. Now, many on the right cheered for this. The idea is let D.C. deal with the people they are allowing into this country. But there's a lot of questions here. First, the National Guard of Texas and Arizona, these border states, can go down to the border and try and solve for this problem. While there is Customs and Border Protection and ICE, federal agencies that are supposed to be dealing with this, the states can take action. And sending illegal immigrants into D.C. may feel like a gotcha or some kind of moral victory, but it's one city. I know it's a federal jurisdiction, and it's probably going to ruffle the feathers of many in Congress. It's just filling up homeless shelters. It's not actually solving any of the problems. In fact, it's basically the same problem. Illegal immigrants aren't just being bussed into D.C. The even bigger story going back was when Joe Biden's administration was flying illegal immigrants secretly on military aircraft around the country, smuggling them in. Now, if this is supposed to be some big gotcha, all it's doing, sending more illegal immigrants into this country. The federal government is fairly, nebulous. It may be centralized to a certain degree in Washington, D.C., as it's their federal jurisdiction. But these offices exist all over the country. Sending homeless people and illegal immigrants into D.C. isn't going to shock senators or the president because he doesn't care. It may piss off the mayor, who is quite pissed off. But it's not really going to do anything about the problems we're facing in this country. Now, there are some candidates like Carrie Lake who says that she's going to go in and solve that problem, and that's what needs to happen. So I'll put it this way. Here's what I see. A moral victory, I guess. I don't know if anything substantive is actually happening with sending illegal immigrants into D.C., but maybe if more and more people learn about what's going on, they may start opposing it. And D.C., the citizens, residents, may not like it all that much. But aside from this, we're also seeing Joe Biden's economic polling tank to record lows, lower than many of the past presidents. And this is a big element of that. You cannot just have wave after wave of non-citizens flood this country at our expense and think the economy will improve. What are the Republicans complaining about? Federal funding for abortions for illegal immigrants. And now I'm just sorry if I lose faith in humanity, if that's the big issue. There's a lot of ways we can solve this problem. I don't know, maybe building bollard fencing. I'm not going to say build the wall, but yeah, maybe build the wall. Maybe deporting many of these people. And we've heard Texas is doing that as well. So it's not just about maybe a publicity stunt or a move like this. In Texas, they're actually picking people up and sending them back. Now, me personally, I think people should come to America. America's great. Legally. So let's talk about this story. The response the mayor is getting. Fox News reached out for comment. What exactly is happening with the actual illegal immigrants in D.C.? Because we got an update there. And Joe Biden, how he's utterly gutting this country. Let me just put it this way. Saudi Arabia is buying oil from Russia at half price and then cranking up the cost and selling it to us. It's remarkable, isn't it? We're just being gutted. Before we get started, head over to Timcast.com and become a member to support our work and get access to our exclusive shows. That's right. We got a bunch of updates that are coming soon. Tales from the Inverted World is now a Timcast.com exclusive. And I'm going to be issuing a statement, a bigger explanation for our plans with the future of Timcast. Cast Castle will also potentially be becoming a larger, more heavily produced show on Timcast.com. But we're moving in that direction because, I think the era of cross your fingers that people watch the content for free and ads make money for you, I don't know if it's exactly working for the kind of content we want to make outside of podcasting. So go to timcast.com if you want to see us do more. The more people who sign up, the more shows we do. We've got comedy specials. We got 2 in the pipeline. We're working on getting us all sorted. And if you're a member, we are going to be giving you as much as we possibly can to make the site bigger. So don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. Let's read that first story from the Post-Millennial. DC Mayor slams Republicans for tricking illegal immigrants into taking buses to the nation's capital. The mayor of Washington, D.C., said on Sunday that the federal government should work to prevent illegal immigrants from being tricked into getting on buses headed towards the nation's capital. The comments were made when Mayor Muriel Bowser appeared on CBS News' Face the Nation after host Margaret Brennan asked Bowser if the influx of illegal immigrants were overwhelming city services. Margaret Brennan asked Bowser, quote, "The Washington Post reported last week that homeless shelters in D.C. were filling up and groups are getting overwhelmed by these buses that the governors of Texas and Arizona are sending here full of migrants. How significant is this influx? How many people?" Mayor Bowser responded, "This is a very significant issue. We have for sure called on the federal government to work across state lines to prevent people from really being tricked into getting into buses. We think they're largely asylum seekers who are going to final destinations that are not Washington, D.C. I worked with the White House to make sure that FEMA provided a grant to a local organization that is providing services to folks. But I fear they're being tricked into nationwide bus trips when their final destinations are places all over the U.S., all over the United States of America. The influx of illegal immigrants to D.C. stems from Republican governors in U.S. border states sending them to the U.S. Capitol to push back against the Biden admin's inaction on securing the U.S. southern border. Texas Governor Greg Abbott announced in April that the state will provide charter buses to send illegal immigrants to Washington, D.C. And since the announcement, the governor has made good on his promise. To help local officials whose communities are being overwhelmed by hordes of illegal immigrants who are being dropped off by the Biden administration, Texas is providing charter buses to send these illegal immigrants to Washington, D.C. A powerful stunt, mind you. We are sending them to the United States Capitol, where the Biden administration will be able to more immediately address the needs of the people that they are allowing to come across our border. Between Texas and Arizona, 79 buses transporting more than 2,000 illegal immigrants have arrived in Washington, D.C. as of mid-May, according to the New York Post. Republican Governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, also announced in April the state legislature's proposed budget includes $12 million for the Florida Department of Transportation to remove illegal immigrants from the state and relocate them, although DeSantis doesn't plan to send them to the nation's capital. This is why I like Ron DeSantis. Look, I know a lot of people were laughing and cheering for sending illegal immigrants to D.C. I don't think that solves any of the problems. I think maybe you should not put them on a bus to D.C., but put them on a bus back to the countries they're coming from, or planes. Now, maybe that's more expensive. Fine. At the very least, we can go to Mexico and say, if you're not enforcing this, we will send them across your borders. They're coming from your country into ours. We're going to send them back that direction. Guard our borders better. Look, I feel for these people because America is amazing. The United States of America, the best country on the planet. I firmly believe so. We've got our internal political problems, but it's remarkable that you have people in this country screaming it's the worst country, it's racist. And then you have people of all different racial backgrounds desperately begging to come here, traveling thousands of miles. Muriel Bowser talks about them being tricked into getting on buses. What about the people being tricked into coming here in the first place? Have you seen the documentaries? Lauren Southern has one, where these immigrants are like, we were told if we come here, we'll be given food, shelter, jobs, so we're coming. And it's not true. It's a manipulation. They say DeSantis has proposed sending the migrants to Delaware or Martha's Vineyard. But the governor's office said that sending them to other progressive states whose governors endorse blatant violations of federal law is also an option. I disagree. I don't think sending them to D.C. makes sense. I think Delaware or Martha's Vineyard is funny. Again, I don't really agree with it, so we'll see what DeSantis really does. But if I had to pick, Martha's Vineyard all the way. You know, that little island off of, Massachusetts or Rhode Island? No, actually, I think it's New York, isn't it? I got no idea. It's up there in New England. Beautiful little island. Very, very expensive. Martha's Vineyard. Yeah, let them deal with it. They are content to watch you suffer when your communities are dealing with these crises, because they are like those in Elysium, sitting in their floating tower above everyone else saying, what do we care? Well, Fox News reached out. Mayor Bowser won't say who is tricking migrants into bus rides from Texas to DC. That's the gist of the story here from Fox News. They reached out to Bowser's office asking if she could point to the person or persons tricking the migrants to travel across the country. The DC mayor was also asked if the strain in the city has changed her perspective on the southern border, currently in compounding crisis. They did not respond. Here was the story that prompted all of this. DC aid groups overwhelmed as migrants arrive from Texas and Arizona, from the Washington Post. They say the buses have been arriving from Texas and Arizona for months after the Republican governors of those states started offering voluntary bus trips to the nation's capital for migrants caught crossing the border from Mexico. Quote, "We were told we were going to be helped here, that somebody was waiting for us." Andre David Blanco, who left Venezuela a month and a half ago, said in Spanish after he arrived at Union Station on Tuesday night. A network of mutual aid organizations armed with limited resources and a nonprofit operating with a federal grant have been scrambling to help migrants, while the number of buses arriving in the city continues to rise. That patchwork of aid fell short Tuesday night after core organizers and volunteers with the Migrant Solidarity Mutual Aid Network advocates were in quarantine after being exposed to the coronavirus while helping migrants over the weekend. SAMU, First Response, an international aid organization that has a federal emergency management agency grant to help migrants, only operates Wednesday through Saturday. SAMU's managing director, Tatiana Laborde, said the organization tried to put together a team to find last-minute resources after it became clear Tuesday that there were not enough volunteers to help the incoming migrants. Laborde said in an interview that SAMU does not have the capacity to coordinate all the buses. "We are increasing our capacity, but all the agencies involved know this is going to take time. Out of the roughly 15 buses arriving earlier this week, the organization can handle half." All right. I want to pause real quick and tell you a story about Alex Stein. Alex Stein is a troll. He's a culture jammer. They call him right wing. And then I talked to him on Friday, and he's actually got a ton of liberal positions. It's interesting. He made a video where he hollered at Ocasio-Cortez, calling her a big booty Latina. I criticized this, saying it was stupid and what did it accomplish? Turns out I was wrong. Because that night, AOC then issued a statement about security at the Capitol and how she felt she wasn't safe and that she believed officers inside the Capitol assisted in the insurrection. She wants to know who opened the doors. She's right. There were officers in the Capitol who took selfies with people, who opened the doors, and we need an investigation of that. I learned after the fact, I didn't put two and two together, the comment was literally stemming from the guy, Alex Stein, who called her a big booty Latina. Seemingly an innocuous comment triggers an emotional response of truth. So while I don't like what Alex Stein said, fact, I stand corrected. It did something. I look at this and I'll have a similar response. I don't like these people being used as pawns by anybody, being brought to this country through lies, being told they're going to get services and then being sent to DC. Don't use people for your politics. And everyone's doing it. And you don't get to say in Texas, yeah, well, they're the ones tricking them into coming or whatever. You say, look, you put them on a bus. You don't drive the bus 1,000 miles or whatever to DC. You drive the bus a few hundred miles to the border and say, I'm sorry. You have to enter legally. And that's the harsh reality. You live out in the country, you learn the harsh realities of what happens when you get pests on your property. And everybody says, oh, but you can't kill the sweet little animal that's a rabies vector that you're legally required to kill. Maybe you know the reference I'm bringing up, but there's a harsh reality to life. Of course we want to help these people. Of course we want them to feel and experience the American dream. But if people keep jumping the line, they're getting exploited, their children are dying, and they're not making this country better for themselves or for anyone. In fact, it's just making things worse. My friends, I'm glad we got the House Republicans here. House Republicans demand Biden admin stop transporting illegal immigrants to get abortions. What? Oh, man, I saw the story and I was like, okay, look, I'm not trying to insinuate it's the only thing Republicans are doing. But talk about the weirdest mishmash of culture war politics. Here we go. We've got illegal immigrations. We also don't like abortion. And now we got abortions going to illegal immigrants. Doesn't like the Hyde Amendment prevent this or something? A group of 22 House Republicans sent a letter Friday to the Biden admin demanding answers on reports that federal agencies have transported illegal immigrants to receive abortions. Well, I can respect conservatives for being consistent. You know, when the right talks about illegal immigrants coming here, then giving birth and having kids who then are granted citizenship, at least they're like, yeah, but we still think abortion is wrong, so we'd rather that than the abortion. This, I got to be honest, I had to put the story in here, and it seems weird, but like, what? I get it. It shouldn't be happening. It's just crazy that it needs to be said. Welcome to the Joe Biden economy. This is what his government brings us. And here we are. With everything going on, the Democratic administration, it's in the gutter. From Timcast. Biden's economic poll numbers hit new low. Biden's numbers represent the worst economic outlook measures CNBC has recorded. Less than a year and a half since being sworn in, President Joe Biden's economic approval numbers have fallen to the lowest levels of his presidency, according to new survey data from CNBC. As Americans struggle with record high inflation and having seen historically high gas prices, Biden's economic approval dropped to 30%. The lowest economic approval ratings for his predecessors, Donald Trump and Barack Obama, were 41% and 37%, respectively. The survey has been conducted for 15 years, but Biden's numbers represent the worst economic outlook measures CNBC has recorded. Between April of 2021 and July 2022, Biden's economic approval has fallen 16 points. It should have started much lower than that, mind you. Just 6% of Republicans approve of Biden's economic record, while 58% of Democrats support it. 68% of respondents believe the United States economy is poor and are pessimistic about its chances of improving. The poll of 800 people across the nation found that 51% believe the president's efforts to combat inflation are making no difference, and 30% think they're actually hurting. According to CNBC, just 12% say they are helping. The survey found that the number one concern in the country is inflation, followed by abortion, crime, immigration, border security, and jobs and unemployment. 62% of respondents believe there will be a recession within the next year. There is a recession. There's going to be a depression within the next year. News of Biden's dropping economic numbers come amid U.S. inflation at a 40-year high. While Americans are starting to flood food banks to feed their families, struggling to keep up with the increased cost of goods and services. The economic news comes just a week after separate polls show that nearly 2 out of 3 Democrats want someone other than Biden as the party's candidate in 2024. Overall support for Biden hit a record low in May with 39% approval rating. Some strategists are concerned Biden's sinking approval numbers could spell trouble for Democrats in the upcoming midterm elections, when several polling organizations predict Democrats will likely lose control of the House, according to Madeline Halpert, writing for Forbes. So let me tie this together for you, my friends. The immigration issue is a very serious issue. Immigration has actually started flipping Latino voters to the Republican Party. Now, while we will say, obviously, it's the economy, stupid. People need money to live. It's remarkable that a major swing from Democrat to Republican is actually coming from immigration. Let's talk about the economy, though, my friends. This one, I couldn't believe it. You know, there are stories I can believe and there are stories that I can't believe. And here we go. Exclusive. Saudi Arabia doubles second quarter Russian fuel oil imports for power generation. Saudi Arabia, the world's largest oil exporter, more than doubled the amount of Russian fuel oil it imported in the second quarter to feed power stations to meet summer cooling demand and free up the kingdom's own crude for export, data showed and traders said. Russia has been selling fuel at discounted prices after international sanctions over its invasion of Ukraine left it with few buyers. Moscow calls the war in Ukraine a special military operation. Now, there's some reporting that Vladimir Putin is regretting his decision. He's saying we can't live in isolation and we are being hurt by this. So he's having to sell oil at a discount, which hurts Russia. But Russia's ruble's actually been strengthened. It's actually balanced. I think it's improving against the dollar. And now they're selling oil to Saudi Arabia, who then sells more expensive oil to us, and we're the ones losing out. While many countries have banned or discouraged purchases from Russia, China, India, and several African and Middle Eastern nations have increased imports. Biden was on Friday visiting Saudi Arabia and was expected to seek an increase in oil supply to global markets from the kingdom to help to lower oil prices that have aggravated inflation worldwide. Amazing. Saudi Arabia says, yeah, we'll increase the oil supply from our production, and then we'll buy cheaper oil from Russia to offset because of your stupid regulations. Think about how dumb that is. Instead of using their own oil and selling us some, they will sell us the oil. Let's just do a hypothetical. They'll sell us the oil for $2, keep $1 for themselves, and then buy Russian oil for $1. Free money. Great policies, Joe Biden. Look, I'm not going to pretend to have all the answers. I understand it's a tough position with Russia and Ukraine. What do you do? I don't have all the answers, man. I can tell you right now, this is not working. I can also, I will say it outright. It is so easy for me to sit here and act like I know what to do. I mean, I see the problem on the surface. Russia invasion of Ukraine. What do? We sanction. Oh, okay, I get it. I do. You don't want to go to war. You want to inflict some pain. It is hurting Russia. It's hurting us too. Therein lies the big challenge. I don't know if there is a solution that we have other than warfare. I mean, seriously, if Russia says they're going to do it, there's nothing you can do. This is why war happens. If other countries got on board, if Saudi Arabia was on board, maybe Russia would say, okay, fine, and stop. But they're not. So this is what happens. In the end, Russia hurt a little bit. Saudi Arabia reaps all the benefits, and the U.S. gets hurt. Our gas prices are at $5. Now, look, you want to argue if this is good or bad. A lot of people will tell you it's hurting the American people and it's not worth our involvement in the Ukraine war. And that's it right there. Anti-intervention. I think that's probably the best position. What is our reasoning for being involved with Ukraine and Russia? Gas into Europe. Russia wanted demands. The U.S. was putting pressure on Ukraine. Russia moved in with war. We try to intervene, and now everyone is getting hurt. If we did nothing, what would have happened? Europe would have high gas prices. It's been high there for a while, but the people of the United States would not be hurting. And therein lies the big issue. Who are we representing? The people of Europe or the people of the United States? Well, it's obvious. We did not need to take action. The American economy could have been strong, but we took action to help Europeans. I understand it. They're NATO countries. But intervening over the price of oil, that's what we've been doing. And it's nuts. The fear is, at least on the surface, because I don't have access to classified information, that if Russia continues to expand and strangle out Europe with high oil prices, then Europe will be hindered, China will grow, Russia will grow, and NATO will fall. So there you go. That's the real fear. Russia's pressure and control of gas into Europe was hurting NATO. So NATO thought they could push back on Russia, and maybe they'll win in the long run, but it means you ultimately pay the price. Here's another reality. If we did nothing, and this is where I'll give Biden credit, because I am not a psychic. If we did nothing, and Russia did strangle out Europe with Gazprom natural gas, and China did keep growing, and we were hindered by that, what if in 50 years the future was dominated by China? I'll tell you my main issue. I have no problem bringing up that point. China expanding in Afghanistan, expanding in South America and Africa. The reality is I think Joe Biden is actually helping China. We know that his son was negotiating private equity deals. So I think ultimately this is more in line with them destroying and gutting this country than doing anything. Them targeting Russia instead of going after the real issues, instead of dealing with the fact that our manufacturing base went to China, says to me, what's actually happening is that they are dangling the keys on one side, keeping us distracted so that they can do work on the other side. And I think that's a serious problem for us. So who should be president? Who should replace Joe Biden? Tucker Carlson, apparently. I love this. Really? Tucker? Okay. Newsweek says Tucker Carlson's chances for being president after being touted as new Trump. I don't even want to read this article. Come on. Ron DeSantis is the new Trump. He's Trump with tact. This is what they're claiming. Tucker Carlson's odds of becoming the next U.S. president are in question after the popular right-wing Fox News host on Friday possibly teased a run for the White House in his speech to Christian conservative voters in Iowa. What? I think I've done the full Grassley, Carlson said. Carlson was referring to Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley, who visited the state's 99 counties during his campaigns. I think he was just saying he went there. Tucker's wide-ranging speech covered everything from inflation and the soaring cost of living in the U.S. to his views on Vladimir Putin. Okay, maybe Tucker is going to run. Would he win? Carlson has long been seen by some Republican strategists as a potential successor to Trump. I got to admit, it's entirely possible that Tucker Carlson does run in the primary. He would run against DeSantis, and it would be really interesting to see who would win. Tucker Carlson might hold Trump back, helping DeSantis. There are a lot of people who like DeSantis, who view him as more pragmatic. Tucker might get the more Trumpian vote, or the inverse could be true. I don't know. Also, as an aside, it literally just started thunderstorming really bad. Maybe you can hear that in the recording. But anyway, they say Carlson's odds for president are plus 5,000 offered by DraftKings. Trump is the favorite with 250, followed by DeSantis at 300. So Tucker, still a ways off. But maybe he runs, at least in the primary. And I think it's possible. In the end, Tucker won't win, but he gets to push ideas and he gets to pull the primary in a certain direction. If Tucker comes on stage and says, how many of you care about this? And they go, woo, then DeSantis and Trump will have to be like, okay, we care about that too. If Tucker goes on stage at a primary debate and says immigration invasion, then DeSantis and Trump will need to address it. Granted, I don't know if you actually need Tucker to do that on the issue of immigration, but I'm saying there are issues. When you run, you can force the party in a certain direction. And Tucker Carlson, being a populist who is mostly concerned with millennial liberal women, I guess that's what he's saying. Maybe he wants to bring up issues that they often talk about to challenge them. Maybe he wants to bring up wokeness and have that be a bigger issue. Maybe Antifa, who knows? Trump is not likely to talk about that too much. DeSantis, maybe not. Tucker could bring it up. Meanwhile, in America, take a look at this from Human Events. Exclusive. Poll shows most voters would support a convention of states. A look at the effort to make it happen. This is actually really interesting. The Trafalgar Group poll shows 65.7% of people support a convention of states. 50.2% of Democrats support it. Now, for what, though? It's specific. They say, to amend the Constitution, propose a constitutional amendments, quote, focusing on term limits for Congress and federal officials, federal spending restraints, and limiting the federal government to its constitutionally mandated authority. 81.3% of Republicans are on board the concept, but support is not split down party lines. 50.2% of Democrats support the concept. 63.3% of those not affiliated with either support it as well. I say, bring it on, baby. We may not need 38 Republican states. We may be able to get a convention of states with a few more conservative-leaning Democrat states who say, we'll agree to at least sit down and discuss the issue. 81.3% of Republicans support a convention of states. 63.3% independent. Mark Meckler, president of Convention of States Action, has made it his life's work to make it exactly that happen. He says calling a convention is all about is answering the most simple and important question facing the U.S. today. That question, who decides? Does D.C. decide? Does bureaucracy unaccountable to the American people far away from them decide? Or do they decide for themselves? I will tell you this. I don't care about Congress term limits. I don't care about Senate term limits. They're Congress too. I care about bureaucratic state term limits. That means if you are appointed to a position in the federal government, you should only be allowed to work for maybe like 12 years, 2 6-year terms. After 6 years, you go up for review. Then there should be hearings for many of these positions. But many of these people are appointed and they're just brought right in. And they work forever. 12 years maybe is too long. Here's what we don't want. What we don't want is a rotating administration so rapid the United States can't actually handle modern current political events on the global scale. You get someone who comes in you get Vladimir Putin. We get a president who says, I'm going to stop Putin. 4 years later, we get a president who says, I like Putin. 4 years later, you get a president who says, I'm going to stop Putin. Yeah, that does not work very well on the global stage. But the bigger issues are people who are working in the intelligence agencies are giving the advice to the president. And so they say, we have long been working for these goals. This is why they didn't like Trump. Trump went, excuse me, wrong, no. And they got mad. We've been here longer than you. We know better than you. We're going to stop you. Okay, get those people out of there. I'd love if we had expertise in the federal government, people with a decade of experience. But when the president says it, you just say, okay. You say, you got it, Mr. President. They didn't like Trump because Trump is arrogant, Trump is brash. And it should be the American people who decide. Right now, we have an illegal immigration problem. It's massive. It's tremendous. It's getting worse. We need something to be done. It's not just about these issues. Let's wrap it all together. Tucker Carlson calls it an invasion. He might want to run for office, at least in the primary. Build up some more profile. I mean, dude's already famous. Write some books, make some money, influence the party. But no, you're probably not going to win. Maybe. Tucker's very popular. In fact, he's one of the most, he's probably more influential than DeSantis or Trump. And if he does run, he has a vehicle to give himself all of the attention. And he can reject Trump. That's power. Tucker's got more charisma and influence than DeSantis and Trump combined. But will he really win? Right now, the American people are concerned about what's happening across this country. Hispanic voters are switching Republican because of what's happening in Texas and Arizona. So what you see there, it actually represents how many Americans feel. The Democrats are becoming the party of wealthy white people. Republicans are becoming the party of working class diversity. How insane is that? That's not supposed to be what's happening, but it is. And it's because traditional liberals like myself are switching parties. And we hold these values. And the ultra wealthy elites who want war and chaos are joining the Democrats because the Democrats serve it up on a silver platter. I don't want war. I don't care for war. I don't care about Putin. I don't care about Ukraine. Let me clarify. I, of course, care that people are getting hurt. I don't like the war. I think war is bad. I have friends from Ukraine, and I'm sad for what's happening. I care in that respect. But as the American people start to ask questions as to why their lives are getting worse and why the economy is getting worse, you can take a look at these people running the show and say, it's right there. We should not be focusing on the Ukrainian people. They need our help, I get it. But the American people need our help. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up tonight at 8 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimcastIRL. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.